Today is September 9th, 2022, and as you can see, I've got all my notches cut out on the starboard side for the stringers. Got a little better at this as I went along. I'm not going to say they're all perfect, but yeah, close enough. And I've got the first stringer glued in, cut and glued in. And as you can see, I kind of used a combination of things here. I've used clamps in some cases, and screws in others. Here, this stringer had a little twist to it, of course, as it came up here in the bow as the bow straightens out. So this had a little bit of twist to it, so I was keeping some clamps in here to pull that top end in. And it's all epoxied in. I used regular epoxy on both the stringer, this 2x4, and I put unthickened epoxy on the frame notches there, and then I went ahead and put thickened epoxy on both pieces, on both the stringer and the frame, and then put them in there. It's not sealing up 100% because I didn't get perfectly cut angles everywhere. As you can see here, there's a gap in there. But that also isn't actually a part of the frame. That's, that could have just been cut out and left open. Still, it's a place for water to collect. So, yeah, I don't know if I'll try to seal those up. It's a little better at some point or not. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, I have a dry hull and it's not going to be an issue. A few places I had to take bolts out, and here's the case. You can see where a bolt had to come out. Now this will get mostly filled in with thickened epoxy. A few other places got a little close. I think I'll be able to get a bolt back in this one. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. If I can't, then I'll put dowels. I'll glue dowels in there and put another bolt in elsewhere. But yeah, so there's a few screws here. You can see there's a screw there. Couple of screws there where I've got a joint. More screws along here. And the screws are for a couple of reasons. One, because of all the framing and whatnot I've got in here. Extra framing, not frames, but I couldn't get clamps on some of these, so I just had to use screws. I think what I'm going to do is these screws will get pulled out. These are just to hold them in place until the epoxy cures. I think I will put some regular screws in, like I did on the siding here. Put some of those galvanized screws in. George really, I don't think he called for that on this. I think he called for it to be left just glued in place, because then you're going to be putting screws in when you put the plywood sheathing on. And you really don't want to be running into a bunch of other screws, but I think maybe it might be a good idea to go ahead and put screws in. I don't know. I'm pretty sure. Ooh, I forgot to clean the epoxy off here. I suppose this is set up already. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah, well, now it's going to have to be ground off. But there is one butt block, one butt joint in there, right there. I did that just to make it work for the length of the 2x that I had. But also, actually, I think it probably keeps them flowing a little smoother along there with butt blocks as opposed to putting them joints on the frames. But in the areas like here where the hull is pretty flat, it really doesn't matter. But when gets to be a little more curvature, that's when a butt block is probably a better deal anyway. But as you can see, I got this side all glued up, and I ran the stringers all the way back into the transom. I've got them let in there. So, yeah, that should work. And I got this one done today, so it took me a day to put the one stringer in the full length of the boat here. And it's actually going to get somewhat easier now, again, as we come up, because you're not going to have all this other garbage to work around and glue around and whatnot. You get back up here, you start getting into a little more busyness, but the next one for sure is going to be significantly easier. But yeah, and this is something George talked about. You just end these wherever they need to end. You don't need to try to let them into the side of the keel there. And so that's what I'm doing. So the first one comes up to frame 4. The next one's going to wind up, what is this, 6 here, I guess. And this one here is going to end at 8. And this one ends at 14, actually. So this will be significantly shorter than the rest of them. But yeah, I don't know, in the plans he had shown 5 of these bilge stringers in here. I've only got 4, but he talked about the spacing, 12 to 14 inches or something like that. And these are all maximum of 12.5 inches spacing between them. So yeah, I didn't see any reason on putting more in. And I've got such a heavy chine here too that yeah, this is going to be pretty stout. But yeah, it's not the most fun work in the world. Trying to paint epoxy, especially the thickened epoxy isn't so bad, but the unthickened epoxy, trying to get that painted up in here is kind of a pain. It's dripping down on you and drips down the brush, and your hand gets all full of, which I got a glove on, of course, but then your hand gets all slippery and slimy, and yeah. So I just have to get used to it, I guess. But yeah, so hopefully another 4 or 5 days or whatever, I'll have this the stringers done on this side, then I can start on the other side. And I don't know if I'll work continuously on the other side, or if maybe I'll start, just for the fun of it, doing a little bit of planking, start bottom planking here just a little bit on this side, just to get a feel for it, and to kind of mix things up a little bit too. Like I said, this isn't horrible, but it's not the most fun either. So I think the planking is going to be a little more fun. But anyway, that's where we are on the 9th of September.